Imagine everything you've been taught about time, history, and faith is a carefully constructed illusion, one that's been in place for over 200 years. What if I told you that a single, ancient book holds the key to exposing this deception? The 1775 Bible is not just a dusty relic, it's a ticking time bomb, waiting to shatter the lies we've accepted for generations. Hidden within its pages are truths that those in power desperately want to keep buried, truths that could rewrite history as we know it. And once you hear this, there's no turning back. You'll see why they've gone to such great lengths to keep this particular Bible out of sight. Think all Bibles are the same, just with minor translation tweaks. Think again. What's inside this one will leave you questioning everything. Let's dive into why this particular Bible is so crucial. Many assume that all Bibles are essentially the same, just with minor translation differences, right? But that couldn't be further from the truth. The 1775 Bible is a preserved piece of history, capturing a moment before deliberate changes were made, before concepts were twisted to serve the interests of those in control. It still holds clues about how we were meant to track time, celebrate sacred days, and live in alignment with divine rhythms. So why is it shrouded in mystery? Because those in power don't want you to know. Scholars have highlighted that after certain reforms, particularly the shift to the Gregorian calendar in 1582, much more changed than just how we count days and months. It reshaped how we view time, how we worship, and even how we understand the universe. The 1775 Bible still bears traces of an older system, a forgotten lunar calendar with 13 months. Yes, you heard that right, minus 13 months. That extra month was erased from history, and that wasn't a mistake. The 12-month calendar is a manufactured reality, a tool designed to control our perception of time, and it has served its purpose for centuries. But why keep this hidden from us? Why not reveal that our ancestors once followed a calendar based on the moon, attuned to the natural rhythms of the earth? The shift from a 13-month lunar calendar to the Gregorian system wasn't just a simple correction, it was a fundamental reprogramming of how humans connect with nature. The 13-month calendar, with each month containing 28 days, matched the lunar cycles, reflecting the moon's phases. This alignment allowed ancient civilizations to sow and harvest in harmony with nature, ensuring that human life flowed with the cosmos. Festivals and religious observances were timed to these cycles, weaving a deep bond between the human spirit and the universe. But when Pope Gregory XIII introduced the Gregorian calendar in 1582, this bond was broken. His calendar promised to fix the inaccuracies of the Julian system, but it was just as much about tightening the Church's control over time. The removal of the 13th month imposed a rigid structure that served political ends. It made people less dependent on the natural rhythms and more on the artificially constructed clock. Because revealing this would have threatened the emerging power structures. The 13-month calendar grounded people in a connection to nature, the divine, and something far beyond earthly rulers. Imagine how different our society could have been if we still followed that system, if people's lives were more in sync with the moon's cycles rather than being driven by industrial schedules and profit-based calendars. The 1775 Bible even preserves references to the true Sabbath day. I'm talking about Saturday, yet millions around the world today worship on Sunday. How did this change occur? It wasn't a divine revelation, it was a political maneuver. In 321 AD, the Emperor Constantine, seeking to unify his empire, designated Sunday as the new day of worship. Sunday, the day named after the sun god. Are we truly supposed to believe this had nothing to do with consolidating power, The choice to shift the holy day from Saturday to Sunday wasn't just a minor religious change, it was a decision with immense political weight. In Jewish tradition, Saturday, the Sabbath, was a day of sacred rest, a time to pause, reflect, and reconnect with God after 6 days of creation. It was a symbol of divine order, a bridge to God's rhythm of work and rest. But Constantine's decree to move the day of worship to Sunday was a calculated attempt to merge Christian customs with the existing Roman practice of honoring Sol Invictus, the sun god, on that day. This shift was a bid to create common ground between Christians and pagans, cementing unity in the empire. Yet this choice came at a spiritual cost, disconnecting believers from an ancient tradition and subtly reshaping their understanding of their relationship with the divine. The 1775 Bible shows us that many of these changes were already in place, but were being subtly resisted by certain groups. Ask yourself if you've been lied to about time, lied to about how to worship. What else is a lie? This Bible is proof that we're living in a world shaped by centuries of manipulation, where what we think is truth has been carefully edited to fit a narrative that benefits a select few. And it doesn't stop at calendars and Sabbaths. The Bible you're familiar with today has been curated, yes, curated by powerful religious and political figures who had every reason to rewrite the rules to keep you in line. The question isn't if we've been lied to, the question is how much. How much of what you believe is really just a convenient version of history that someone in power wanted you to follow? Because when you dig into the 1775 Bible, you're not just reading scripture, you're reading a document that survived before major rewrites, before massive distortions of time and truth. Now that we've cracked open the truth hidden within the 1775 Bible, it's time to ask the next big question: why? Why were these monumental changes made? Why did they shift our calendar, manipulate our days of worship, and rewrite the very flow of time? Simple, it's about control. Think about it: by altering how we experience time, those in power weren't just tweaking minor details, they were reshaping reality itself. The calendar, the Sabbath, the entire structure of how we organize our days, it all plays into a deeper agenda to keep humanity in line. But why is this important? Because how we experience time is fundamental to how we connect with the divine, with nature, and with each other. When you break that connection, when you distort it, you control how people think, how they live, how they believe. And that's exactly what happened. You see, in ancient times, people followed natural cycles, the moon, the seasons, the rhythms of the earth. There was an intrinsic connection between humanity and the cosmos. But when you introduce an artificial calendar, when you tell people when and how to worship, you sever that connection. Suddenly, life isn't about harmonizing with the world around us, it's about meeting deadlines, following a system that they designed. The 13-month calendar and the true Sabbath were threats to this new order, so they were erased. The church and the ruling elite needed to consolidate power, and what better way to do that than by reshaping how time was perceived? They created a reality where people no longer questioned the structure, they simply followed it. The Gregorian calendar became the new norm, and with it came a new way of life that disconnected humanity from its spiritual roots. But don't take my word for it, the clues are all there. The 1775 Bible contains remnants of the old system, remnants that scream of a time when people knew the truth. The change wasn't some innocent mistake or a harmless adjustment, it was a calculated move. By controlling the calendar, by shifting the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday, they didn't just change religious practice, they rewrote the very foundation of human spirituality. And this isn't just about the past. Think about the impact this has on us today. We're still living in this distorted system. Every time we check our calendars, plan our week, or schedule our holidays, we're following a script that was written for us centuries ago by people who had everything to gain from keeping us in the dark. But it doesn't end there. When you control time, you control cycles, spiritual cycles, agricultural cycles, even social cycles. By removing the 13th month and shifting sacred days, those in power made sure that people's connection to the natural world and the divine was cut off. We became slaves to a system that wasn't designed for us. It was designed to keep us compliant. So now we know they reshaped our concept of time and severed humanity's connection to the spiritual cycle. But that was only the beginning. They didn't just mess with the days of the week or shift holy days, they completely erased an entire month. That's right, our ancestors followed a 13-month calendar, not the 12-month version you've been living by your entire life. And you might be thinking, what difference does 1 month make? It makes all the difference. You see, each of those 13 months was perfectly aligned with the lunar cycle minus 28 days per month, every month. That's how nature intended it. The moon governs the tides, agriculture, and even the rhythms of our bodies. But by removing that extra month, they disconnected us from this natural order. The calendar you're following today, it's artificial, a man-made construct designed to control how we live and even how we think. And this wasn't some accidental oversight, it was a deliberate move. In 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduced the Gregorian calendar, which shaved off days, removed the 13th month, and crammed everything into 12. This was about more than just streamlining time, it was about consolidating power. The 1775 Bible still contains traces of that original timekeeping system, but those references were buried or ignored to ensure that the new system took hold. Think about it, the lunar calendar, with its perfect symmetry, tied people directly to the cosmos. Farmers knew when to plant and harvest. Religious festivals were in sync with the changing seasons, and life flowed with nature. But what happens when you break that connection? People stop relying on their natural instincts, on the rhythms of the earth, and start relying on a calendar that's been forced on them. This isn't just about losing a month, this is about losing our connection to something much bigger, something that has spiritual and cosmic implications. By controlling time, they've controlled our relationship to time, and they've managed to do it so thoroughly that most people today don't even know this calendar ever existed. The introduction of the Gregorian calendar also brought about a more regimented view of daily life. Instead of following the natural cycles of the moon or the changes in seasons, society began to adhere to a standardized structure of weeks, months, and years. This artificial division of time, divorced from natural markers, like the phases of the moon, encouraged a lifestyle oriented around productivity and industrial schedules. It shifted focus from living in harmony with the natural world to meeting deadlines and following schedules dictated by human-made constructs. The Church's endorsement of this calendar helped ensure that not only religious practices but also everyday life would conform to a rigid system. This control over time reinforced social hierarchies and created a population more easily governed, as people's lives became organized around the clock rather than the rhythms of the earth. But the 1775 Bible holds the proof. The clues are there, hidden between the verses and chapters, remnants of a time when humanity wasn't bound to a mechanical, man-made calendar. And think about who benefits from that control. If we were still following a 13-month lunar calendar, we'd be living in a world governed by natural cycles, not work weeks and financial quarters. Time would be in harmony with the universe, not bent to the will of rulers looking to keep us in check. The question is, why did they remove that 13th month? Was it simply to standardize time, or was it part of a larger plan to sever us from the natural order? And more importantly, how much has our spiritual awareness suffered because of this shift? They didn't just take away a month, they took away our ability to see time as it truly is a flowing, cyclical connection to the divine. We've been programmed to accept the 12-month system without question, but what if that's just another layer of control? What if this entire calendar we use today is designed to keep us locked in a state of disconnection from the earth, from the stars, from ourselves? The fact that the 1775 Bible still contains traces of the original calendar proves that not everyone went along with the changes. Some knew the truth, and they tried to preserve it. But that truth has been hidden, locked away, and replaced by something else, something that benefits those who pull the strings. We've seen how time itself was reshaped, how an entire month was erased, but the manipulation goes even deeper. The very concept of the week, how we mark sacred time, when we rest and when we work, has been distorted. You've probably never even questioned it because it's been drilled into you from birth. Sunday is the first day of the week, right? Wrong. It's not, and it was never supposed to be. This isn't just a minor detail, it's the core of how time was manipulated to serve those in power. In the original biblical tradition, the Sabbath, the day of rest, was Saturday, the seventh day. It was sacred, set apart from the others, and it represented the culmination of creation. But somewhere along the way, that got flipped upside down. Suddenly, Sunday became the day of rest, and Saturday just became part of the weekend. So what happened? Why did this fundamental truth get altered? The answer lies in one man, Emperor Constantine. Back in 321 AD, Constantine made one of the most pivotal decisions in religious history. In his effort to unite the Roman Empire, he shifted the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. Why? Because Sunday was the day of the sun god, Sol Invictus. Constantine was a political genius, and he knew that aligning the rising Christian religion with Roman pagan traditions would help solidify his control. And it worked. The shift from Saturday to Sunday was less about spirituality and more about consolidating power. Here's where it gets really interesting. The 1775 Bible still holds traces of the original Sabbath, before Constantine's manipulation became cemented in Christian tradition. This was a major turning point, not just in the calendar, but in the way millions of people understood their relationship with the divine. The real Sabbath was erased from common practice, and with it, people lost their connection to the natural spiritual order of time. Now, think about the implications of this. Every week, billions of people around the world are unknowingly following a tradition that has been altered for political convenience. What we think of as the holy day Sunday wasn't chosen because of divine instruction, it was chosen because it served the agenda of an empire. And yet, here we are, still living by that system, still following a cycle that was crafted for control, not for spiritual alignment. The decision to move the Sabbath wasn't just about which day people should rest, it fundamentally altered the rhythm of how time was supposed to be experienced. By moving the holy day to the first day of the week, they broke the flow. The true Sabbath was meant to be a sacred end, a culmination, a time to reflect on creation and rest in the presence of the divine. But now it's been twisted into a new beginning, distorting its original purpose. And the effects of that distortion. Look around, people are disconnected from the spiritual rhythms of time. They're living by a system that doesn't align with their natural spiritual needs. The 1775 Bible is like a time capsule, a reminder that there was once a different way, a way that was more in tune with the cosmic order. So why hasn't this been corrected? Why are billions of people still worshiping on Sunday, believing it's the true day of rest, when it's not? The answer is simple: power. If people began to question the calendar, if they started to challenge the authority of a tradition that has been in place for centuries, it would shake the foundations of religious and political institutions around the world. We've already seen how time has been manipulated, from the weekly Sabbath to the missing 13th month. But they didn't stop there. They went after the very beginning of the year, the first month itself. What if I told you that January was never supposed to be the start of the year? That's right. For centuries, March was actually considered the first month. It was tied to the natural world, the rebirth of life in spring, and the rhythms of nature. So why did they move it to January, a cold, barren month in the dead of winter? Before January became the start of the new year, March held this position in many ancient cultures. March was not just any month, it symbolized the rebirth of life, aligned with the arrival of spring and the renewal of nature. It was named after Mars, the Roman god of war, representing the energy and vigor that comes with new beginnings. In this way, the year started in harmony with nature's cycles, reflecting the rejuvenation of life after the cold winter months. The shift to January, a month named after Janus, the Roman god of transitions and duality, signified a break from this natural rhythm. It was a deliberate choice by rulers to create a new narrative of time, one that focused on control over both the past and the future. This shift allowed authorities to align the new year with other strategically important holidays, like Christmas, further embedding their influence over time and spirituality. The answer lies in the same pattern we've been seeing: control. The shift from March to January didn't just happen overnight. This manipulation traces back to the Roman Empire and Julius Caesar's introduction of the Julian calendar in 45 BC. But it wasn't fully locked in place until Pope Gregory's reform in the 16th century. And don't think for a second that this change was just about better timekeeping. No, this was about rewriting the structure of time itself to fit a new agenda. March, named after Mars, the god of war, was the beginning of everything, a time when the earth awakens from winter's slumber, a natural starting point for life and new beginnings. It's the logical spiritual time to start the year. So why move it? Why force January to the top of the calendar? It's because March was deeply tied to older traditions that celebrated natural cycles, pagan festivals, and connections to the divine that predated Christianity. By moving the new year to January, they severed that link. January, named after the Roman god Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings, was the perfect symbol for this new order, a god who looks both forward and backward, symbolizing control over both the past and the future. By starting the year in January, the powers that be took control of that narrative. They imposed their structure on the masses, disconnecting us from the ancient rhythms that had guided humanity for millennia. And it wasn't just about practicality. This was about reshaping the spiritual and cultural calendar to fit a new world order. Moving the new year to January allowed the church to align key holidays like Christmas and Easter with the new calendar system, further embedding their control over the cycles of time and the religious experience of the masses. It was a move to solidify the dominance of a new power structure, one that placed religious and political authority above natural and divine cycles. The 1775 Bible still reflects traces of this old order. You can find remnants of the original structure that tie back to a time when people recognized March as the true beginning of the year, a time when life was aligned with the natural world, not the artificial systems of empires and religious institutions. By shifting the new year, they didn't just manipulate the calendar, they manipulated our entire concept of time. They took away the idea that the year begins with the renewal of life in spring and replaced it with a cold, lifeless start in the dead of winter. That's how deep this control goes. It's not just about what day we celebrate, it's about how we experience time, how we mark the cycles of life, and how disconnected we become from the natural world. For centuries, we've been living according to a time system that's completely out of sync with nature. We're celebrating the new year at a time that makes no sense. We're marking the beginning of things in the middle of winter, when the world is still frozen, when life hasn't even begun to stir. And we don't question it because it's been this way for so long. The Gregorian calendar, introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582, is the system most of the world follows today. On the surface, it seems like a harmless improvement over the old Julian calendar. But dig deeper, and the cracks start to show. The real purpose of this shift wasn't about aligning the calendar with the solar year, it was about aligning the calendar with a new world order. A system that severed humanity's ties to the natural world, the lunar cycles, and the ancient understanding of time. It was about enforcing a uniform system that placed religious and political authorities at the top of the hierarchy. By adopting this new calendar, the church and the ruling elite effectively rewrote time itself. The lunar calendar, once tied to the rhythms of nature, the cosmos, and ancient spiritual practices, was buried under a new system that divided time into neat little boxes. And while they sold it to the masses as a correction, the real reason was to ensure that everyone was following their time, a time that reinforced their festivals, their holy days, their control. Think about it, by shifting the calendar, they didn't just change dates, they changed the way we experience reality. They introduced this idea of the linear passage of time, where everything moves forward in a straight line, always pushing toward the next deadline, the next year, the next task. But the ancients didn't see time that way. Time was cyclical. It was about seasons, cycles, and renewal. The moon governed the flow of time, and people lived in harmony with those cycles. The Gregorian calendar crushed that. And don't just take my word for it, the clues are all there. The 1775 Bible still holds references to the older time systems, traces of the lunar calendar that existed before Gregory's reform. These remnants serve as a reminder of a time when humanity wasn't bound to a mechanical clock but lived in sync with the universe. And that's precisely why this version of the Bible, along with earlier traditions, was quietly pushed aside, because it didn't fit with the new agenda. But the Gregorian calendar didn't just erase ancient timekeeping, it also locked us into a system where we became slaves to the clock. Suddenly, time wasn't something we lived with, it was something we had to obey. You punch in, you punch out, and your days are divided into artificial segments that have nothing to do with nature or spirituality. By controlling the calendar, they didn't just control when people celebrated, they controlled how people lived. And that's exactly what they wanted. When you look closely, the Gregorian reform wasn't just about correcting leap years, it was about controlling humanity's relationship with time. The church had immense power during this period, and the calendar reform allowed them to solidify that power by enforcing a system that aligned religious festivals like Easter and Christmas with the new calendar. They ensured that every aspect of life followed their rules, their structure. One of the most strategic moves in this grand manipulation was Constantine's decision to change the day of rest from Saturday to Sunday. And this wasn't just a small tweak in religious practice, this was a political masterstroke. In 321 AD, Constantine, the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, declared Sunday the official day of rest. Now, this might seem like a simple switch from one day to another, but the truth is far more sinister. Constantine's empire was a melting pot of different religions, and Sunday wasn't just any day, it was the day dedicated to Sol Invictus, the Roman sun god. By making Sunday the new holy day, Constantine wasn't just reforming Christian practice, he was uniting his empire under a single unified religious calendar that blended Christian and pagan traditions. It was all about control, bringing everyone under the same umbrella of time, of worship, of power. But here's what they didn't tell you: this wasn't just a religious decision. This was about ensuring that the Roman Empire remained in control of both the spiritual and political lives of its people. The 1775 Bible still contains traces of the original Sabbath, the true day of rest, Saturday. Saturday, the seventh day, was the sacred culmination of the week, the day that God rested after creation. But by shifting the holy day to Sunday, Constantine wasn't just changing a tradition, he was rewriting the spiritual experience of millions of people for generations to come. And now, centuries later, we continue to follow this altered schedule without question. Sunday is now the day when most Christians worship, but it's not the day that was intended. The original Sabbath was Saturday, and that's no small detail. This shift wasn't about faith, it was about politics, about Constantine using religion as a tool to stabilize his empire. The day of rest, the most sacred day of the week, was moved not because of divine instruction, but because it suited the agenda of an empire. And yet, here we are, still following that decision centuries later, without ever questioning the origins of the practice. So what does this all mean? It means that the calendar we follow, the days we worship, the very way we experience time, have all been shaped not by divine will but by political maneuvering and the consolidation of power. And the 1775 Bible is one of the few remaining witnesses to this truth. It holds the remnants of a world before these changes were imposed, a world where time and spirituality were aligned with the cosmos, not with the agendas of emperors and popes. But here's the good news: now that we know the truth, we can start asking the right questions. We can challenge the systems that have kept us in the dark for so long. We can begin to reconnect with the natural rhythms that were once so integral to human life before they were erased by those who sought control. Understanding the hidden layers of time manipulation isn't just about uncovering historical facts, it's about reclaiming a lost sense of connection with the natural world. The ancient timekeeping systems, like the 13-month lunar calendar, were not perfect, but they represented a world where time was seen as cyclical and interconnected with the cosmos. Rediscovering these forgotten truths allows us to question the very foundations of how we perceive time, faith, and our place in the universe. It opens the door to a renewed spirituality that is not bound by the constraints of artificially imposed calendars, but is in tune with the cycles of the moon, the seasons, and the heartbeat of the earth itself. By reconnecting with this natural order, we can begin to challenge the systems that have kept us disconnected for so long and find a path back to a more balanced, harmonious existence. The truth is out there, hidden in plain sight, and it's up to us to rediscover it. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. Thank you for watching today's video. If you found this information helpful and want to uncover more hidden truths, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our latest videos. Don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. We look forward to hearing from you. See you in the next video.